Hi everyone, this is the part 2 of our lesson about random methods. So using a getRandomNumber method last time, this method allows our pelican, if I run this program, to move randomly in the world, just like that. Okay, and I want to explain in this part of the video how exactly does getRandomNumber method works as part of the condition, and how else can we make our pelicans move freely other than that. Because if you notice, if I reset this program, and please observe how the pelicans turn, while they turn differently from each other, you would notice that they have certain times or cycles in turning, but they only move clockwise, if you notice. And we want to change that later, and we want some of the pelicans to move either left or right, or to turn clockwise or to turn counterclockwise. So let's go back to our code, and that will be our pelican crash. So from here, remember where we wrote our random number or get random number method. We wrote it under the run wild method that we just created. And here, if Greenfoot dot get random number, again the reason why we have Greenfoot here, because we're borrowing it from the Greenfoot class. So if Greenfoot dot get random number 100, which serves as the limit, so that means there are 100 numbers to choose from 0 to 99. So if you're wondering why, I explained that in the previous video. And now we have a value and like a symbol here, which is the less than symbol, and then 10. So what does it mean by this? Out of the 100 numbers 0 to 99, we have compare it. We have to compare it right after. Like for example, the computer selects a number from 0 to 99. Let's say 60, 70, 50. Then it will be compared to 10. That the value that we chose to compare it with. So if it's less than 10, then it will proceed to the then statement. So let's say the value is 78. So 78 is 78 less than 10. So it's not less than 10, so which is false. So if it's false, it will not proceed to the turning about 45 degrees. But if the value generated, and I hope you know how less than and greater than works, like for example for 10, numbers less than 10 would be from 0 to 9. So from 0 to 9, chances are the value, like for example, the value generated or the random value created from this method is 7. So 7 is 7 less than 10. Then if it's, of course, true, since it's true, it will proceed to turn 45. So as we run the program, probably can slow down this for a bit so that you can see well how the random method works. Okay, so they don't simply turn at the same time this time, and they have their own separate values. Alright, so each object has its own turning mechanism there. So, of course, as mentioned, I want us to also see how often does turning happen here. So, 10 numbers, which is 0 to 9, out of 0 to 99, that is 10 out of 100. 10 out of 100 is, well, 10 over 100 if you write it in fraction. Then, of course, if you use percentage, it is, well, I'll write it as a comment here. It will turn 10% of the time, right? Because out of 10, 100 numbers, only 10% or 10 possibilities from 0 to 9 might happen in order for this then statement to activate. All right. So I mentioned about earlier how our pelicans behave, that they do turn in different times, but if you notice, they turn in the same direction, which is clockwise. And of course, no pelican does that, right? They don't only turn clockwise, but they also turn counterclockwise, or they move around left or right or in any position that they may want. Okay? So we want to add some action or to the direction for our pelicans to turn to as well. And we will try to modify it by also randomizing the number of degrees that our pelican will turn. And remember, here we have provided a constant value, and remember, constant means permanent. And what we're going to use here, instead of typing a number, a constant number, we are going to type here or use here the method that we just learned about, and that is getRandomNumber, to randomize the number that it will create. So if you notice, getRandomNumber, and I haven't typed the limit yet inside its parentheses, but if you are to provide it, if you type 45, what will happen here? So this will create a number, or it will create a number. Let me resize the text so that you can see well. Okay, so turn Greenfoot.getRandomNumber. So it will select a number from 0 to the limit. But the limit is not included in the counting, so it will be 0 to 44. So giving us a value of course, from 0 to 44. But remember, all these numbers are still 45 numbers. So 45 numbers to choose from. So 1 out of 45 chance for the turn value to happen. So for example, it generates a turn, and then it generates the value 30. So randomly, it becomes 30. So turn 30. So that becomes turn 30. 30 degrees of turning. And let's say, for example, random number of 21, then that again is 21 degrees of turning. And let's see what happens to our pelicans here as we run the program. Let me speed it up again. And if you notice now, they would have different speeds, different sizes of turns. Some would turn bigger, some turns are smaller, because even our turn, which is the turning because of the number of degrees, this is 45 here, the number of degrees. So that means 45 degrees or 44 degrees of movement, or let's say 1 degree of movement, 2 degrees of movement. Of course, the higher the turn value or the degree value, the larger or the wider it will turn about. So that is how getRandomNumber also works as part of a parameter. So just like turn, because this works because remember, turn will only requires an integer here. And since given the method getRandomNumber can provide an integer by itself, then we can simply use it instead of just giving a fixed value or a constant value as our parameter. But again, if you notice, they will turn still. If I run this, they will turn still going to the turning right or turning clockwise. So we wanted to add some counterclockwise movement by doing this kind of action. Well, remember, since this method creates a random value, 0 to 44, it should only create positive values. And remember how positive values or symbols can affect our turning, turning here. And given that positive can make a clockwise turn, then we want to have a negative value. So some would say, like, if we are to use negative value instead, would that work? If we compile, see, well, no syntax error for some reason, and that is acceptable for this code. But let's see what happens if we run the program and see if there are errors that we might encounter later on. If we run the program, oops, if you notice, I just click run and suddenly the program stopped. And a window, which is the debugger, shows us a bigger error, and it requires a bigger window to show that error, and it says here bound must be positive. So bound is synonymous to limit. So what we are being required of is a positive value, not a negative value. So minus 45 here, or negative 45, is not acceptable despite a syntax error earlier, or no syntax error message. So it means it is not accepted still despite we don't have some errors in our code. So meaning it's not designed to be that way. So it can only accept positive values. So how then can we introduce a negative value? So negative value will make it turn to the left as well. So let's try typing 90, then minus 45. Okay, so 90 minus 45. Notice where I added this minus 45. It is right after my random method, getRandomNumber. So what will happen here? Well, before I run the program, I want to explain how this will work. So it will generate a random number from 0 to 89. Then after the value has been generated, it will do this operation, which is subtraction. We will subtract the 45 from any random number here. So let's say I'll try to illustrate that in maybe Notepad. Okay, so let's see. Try to make the font bigger. Okay, so let's say the random generated value is from 0 to 89. It's, let's say, 86. So again, then the operation would be right after that would be 86 minus 45. What do we get? 86 minus 45 is, okay, so 86 6 minus 45, and we get 41. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to use the calculator here because I want to be really exact with this. So 86 minus 45, so 41. And let's say we have, so that means the final value of the turn value here would be 41 instead. Okay, so turn 41 degrees. So let's say another value, let's say from 0 to 89. So maybe 64. So 64 is a random number minus 45, and we get what? So 64 minus 45, we get 19. Okay, and so that will be the turn value, which is 19. So what about how, so all are positive. So positive values, right? How about how can it get, well, let's say, let's try this first. Let's say, again, a number from 0 to 89. So it will, we will have, let's say 45. So just in case it actually generated 45 as its random value, equal sign, which is 0. Okay, of course, it's 0. So that means turn 0. So at random number 45, the value generated will be 0. So that will be turn 0. So at turn 0, of course, it will not turn at all. So how about it will generate a random number like less than 45. So let's say 30 minus 45, and that would be, of course, negative 15. So now, if you notice, if we get a value lower than 45, random number lower than 45, we get a negative value. So let's see how this works in our code. Compile this now and see how our pelicans behave this time. So I'll try to slow it down so that we can see clearly how they move. Okay, so if you notice, some of the pelicans here move clockwise, some of them move counterclockwise now. Okay, in different directions. Alright, so that is how you make use of the getRandomNumber. Well, of course, you can also use getRandomNumber to randomize even the move speed of your pelican if you want to. So you can type here greenfoot.getRandomNumber and just provide your own value for your limit. So try to play with this method, and I hope you can use it in your future projects in Greenfoot. And that's it for our today's lesson. Goodbye and thank you.